So Ford cutting jobs 10% globally across the board. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't really make it to my top 3 stories. But because of the atmosphere that Trump has created specifically for the auto industry, where right after the election visited, all the major automakers, has been to Detroit saying you cannot move things to Mexico.
Yeah, was it Chevy or Ford that he supposedly saved a factory to
Ford.
Ford.
So
they were going to move to Mexico.
Going to move to Mexico. They didn't created 700 jobs in Michigan, and that was a big, plus. But it's a really interesting time right now for automakers because they now have to please 2 different people. Beforehand, all they had to really care about is Wall Street. If you're growing, if you're cutting costs, whatever quarterly, returns you're getting, if they're better than projected, then you are compensated by Wall Street. Now they have to contend with DC in a way that they never had to before. So they've really got to look at it and say, okay, do I piss off the president who might tweet about us poorly and give us really bad PR that could affect our share price, or do we do something that's not good for our bottom line and piss off Wall Street that's going to negatively affect our share price? And it looks like, to me, Ford has made a decision here by cutting 10% of the workforce. Now, keep in mind, it is global, but people in the U.S.
10%,
will lose.
How many jobs is that? That's got to be 10,000?
They didn't list in the article that I had.
How many employees does
total.
Ford have? It's got to be.
Should have had that information, but they're looking for $3 billion in cost savings. Now, the $3 billion in cost savings could lead to a huge spike in share price because Wall Street will say, good for you, we like your company, you're cutting costs.
Look at all these
decisions.
retail stores that are falling, though. I mean, this is what we saw a couple of years ago with Sears and all these different stores. Like, we're going to, cut jobs and try to spike back up. I feel like every time you cut that many jobs, you're kind of already, it's almost too late, but maybe not.
So part of the issue here is that a lot of the profits from, revenue here are being put towards future goals. So fully autonomous vehicles, fully electric vehicles, that's the long-term gain. And will that be really important for Ford moving forward? If they don't take all of that money that they're earning right now and put it towards these future projects, then they're done anyway. But by taking all of the money that could be going to shareholders and putting it towards something that may not earn any money in the future and may be a lost cause anyway, that's scary for a shareholder. Because you say, look, you're making the money on all these F-150s, they're selling like crazy.
Yeah.
We want that money, don't take it and put it into something that you're probably going to get beat by Google and Tesla on anyway. So stock price down at Ford 40% since mid-2014. But I really look at this as an incentives problem. And right now, they've got positive incentives by Wall Street to cut, to make things cheaper, to cut their workforce, to be a more nimble company because their share price will go up. And all they've got on the Trump side is negative. So if they cut jobs, and he'll put out a tweet that it's BS, and when they moved all these jobs from Mexico to Detroit, Trump claimed it as a victory for himself, but they didn't get any subsidies based on that.
Yeah,
so unless there's some sort of written in incentive on the positive side.
That headline, and that's all he cared about. So
yeah, so Ford did that. They maybe got a blip of okay press for a second, but probably not. No. I don't think people were like, oh man, I'm buying a bunch more Fords now, and clearly that wasn't the case.
Well, one thing too, when I saw this story and that you were going to bring it up, I was just curious with Uber and all this ride sharing, how that potentially is affecting people with new vehicles. And a study came out that it really isn't. Less than 1% are now not buying vehicles because they can just use Uber or Lyft to get the point A to point B. And 57% of U.S. drivers have not used a rideshare, have not used Uber and Lyft. So I think since we're in San Diego, we use LA and New York, we're in these different big cities, and Uber just is a obvious no-brainer. Smaller cities, especially Midwest, and even smaller cities outside of the LAs of the world, just don't use it as much. Because I thought that may have been part of the reason why Ford and some of these auto companies are having a tough time, but less than 1% not buying cars because of that.
Yes, but the writing's on the wall. I think anything starts in the coastal cities and then moves inward. So first it will be the ride sharing stuff, but now, like, even places like Nashville that didn't have it earlier, and now everybody's using Uber.
Yep.
And I would assume Austin, Texas, and Denver. And so you start to get into where there's people really using them, and it takes longer. And that will probably be the case with the autonomous vehicles eventually. But every car company is looking at that as the future and knows that if they don't get it on that, then they're gone completely.
Yeah.
But I will say, so this is one piece of advice that I'll give to anybody who cares to listen to it.
Not many. Just kidding.
But I really do think that, my daughter will not be driving a car in 16 years. I don't assume that she'll go and get a license and have a car and drive it herself. It'll either be an autonomous car or it'll be ride share everything. And partially public transportation will continue to get better, hopefully. I think, Elon Musk will prove with some of these tunnels that he's digging in LA that it's possible to have a new functioning public transportation
I think it just
system.
depends on how financially able it is. Because right now you could buy a somewhat decent old Honda Civic for $1,000. And as long as you put the puppy with $50 of gas per month, you can get to a lot of places for $50 or $1,000 for the total of the car. So I think ride sharing would have to be a lot more cheaper, or there's going to have to be cheaper alternatives.
Well, but
for
it's
the
also
working class.
gasoline is going to go up in price.
Yeah.
It's not an unlimited resource. It costs a lot of money to be able to go drill and find oil and all this other crap. We are importing so much of it from other places in the world that have total control over
I guess my
pricing.
point is, let's say someone gifted you a car for $2,000 and it's a decent, reliable vehicle. You can get around to work and back and to a bunch of different places, to the store, for probably less than $100 if you stay within your community and you live close to the work.
If you have a $2,000 car, but there's a lot of people that just don't want the BS.
No, I know, but I'm saying from a ride-sharing standpoint, to get to home and work and back, I mean, that alone is going to take $20 every single trip. It's just going to be extrapolated.
Yeah, I agree, but I think as the technology gets better,
It'll be cheaper.
transportation is going to get cheaper.
Yeah.
It's going to get cleaner, it's going to get cheaper, and I think long term, a driver car is going to be a big time status symbol. So a brand new Mercedes right now will never become a classic. There's too much computer stuff going on, but like a 57 Chevy in 25 years, when everybody's got cars that look like exactly the same and click in together and is almost like your own little
I don't know if
box
I agree.
car. 16
years, I think, our parents thought there was going to be flying vehicles in the year 2000. So I think 16 years may be a little young in 25.
I don't think so.
You think 16 years your daughter will not have to get a driver's license?
No, I don't. I don't think there's any way that transportation will be the same. And it's not just because of the technology. It's also because, driving is the #1 way that people in the United States die, I think, or at least top 3. So it's really dangerous.
75 people a day.
And for teenagers, it's incredibly dangerous to drive, especially with all the technology that's going on. So I really do think
I will say my younger cousins that had just turned 17, 18, they just never got the driver's license.
And depending on the city, like you're right. In certain areas, like, you'll have to drive because you're, 20 miles away from school or whatever in the Midwest. But in major metropolitan cities, in Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco and New York and Chicago, people will not be driving on the roads. It's going to improve traffic. So if you do take out your, classic car, I think if you buy a bunch of classic cars right now, their stock price will go up substantially over the next 25 years.
Over, under 16 years, you're going to go under? I'm going to go over.
I think in the next 7 years, trucking is gone. There won't be anybody driving trucking cars, and that's going to be the real test case.
I think we'll get smartphones in the context prior to everybody not having to drive at all.
I think it's a lot of simultaneous, but look at where Tesla's at right now. You can hands-free have Tesla drive on the road. So 16 years from now, just looking at Tesla.
But I guess my point is the human aspect of it. Are you still going to be able to need to know how to drive in case you need to take over, or it's 100% autonomous? Because that's still something that's not even, there's not even laws built around it just yet in terms of whose fault it is and all that.
No, but the reason why I think it's going to be so successful isn't for any other reason other than the
and nothing's
market.
Autonomous right now, even like underground subways or planes are obviously, everything has at least like a conductor or someone that can take over, even though a
Yeah,
lot of
like
it's
standing
autopilot.
there. But I mean, I do think that the market opportunity for the first person who gets the first, approved, regulated autonomous vehicle is going to make so much money.
And you and I are driving to LA after this. It's going to be about a 2.5 hour trip both ways. And
Imagine if we could be in the back of the car doing this
exactly.
the entire way.
Not
up
even
there.
this, but just be able to be on our laptop in the back of a Suburban.
Read
and
a
it's
book.
Just going.
Yeah, I mean, all
Traffic
that,
or not, it stops when you need to. Yeah, it would be so convenient.
all that time spent where you've got to do it, and it's stressful. I think it leads people to be more stressed out if you're driving in traffic every single day to and from work.
Man, I don't think
your
people
stress
would
levels
mind
rise.
a 45-minute commute and maybe live a little outside where their job is cheaper and be able to buy a larger house because you don't have to get up early and stop and go traffic, and you just
Yeah, if you got
put
a
it on auto.
coffee machine back there and you can eat your food and you can read the paper and you show up to work well prepared and rested. But yeah.